There's finally an update for the women's tag team division, and it's not a good one, so we'll see what's going on there. We'll also check out the latest news surrounding the Bloodline, what's going on with Dolph Ziggler, and more. Let's start things off with this big update for the women's tag team division and the women's tag team titles themselves. The women's tag team division was introduced back in 2019 and was a hot topic back then. Some fans felt like the titles would be a good idea, while others felt like there just wasn't enough depth to have women's tag team titles. The titles started strong by being won inside of the Elimination Chamber by Sasha Banks and Bayley. Sasha and Bayley, the inaugural champions, would go on to hold the titles for a few weeks before dropping them at WrestleMania 35. This led to the first Sasha Banks walkout and all of the other rumors and reports about how Sasha and Bayley were so disappointed with such a short reign for the first ever tag team champions. Sasha and Bayley wanted to hold the titles for a while to start them off the right way and make them truly mean something and seem important. They didn't get a chance to do that. The first time the women's tag team titles changed hands would end up being foreshadowing for how the titles would be treated in the years to follow. Constant short reigns that didn't mean anything, and forgetting about the existence of the women's tag team titles. That was the constant theme surrounding the women's tag team titles over the last few years. The only point in history of the women's tag team titles where they actually felt like they meant something was when Sasha Banks and Bayley had their second reign with the titles in 2020. Sasha and Bayley did what they wanted to originally do with their first reign as tag team champions. They elevated the titles and made people care for the title during that entire golden role models era. But ever since they lost the titles, it feels like the women's tag team titles have been constantly changing hands and lost in the shuffle. When Sasha and Naomi won the titles at WrestleMania 38, everyone was optimistic with the titles that they will return to the forefront and given proper care. That only lasted a few weeks until Sasha and Naomi realized nothing was changing with the way the tag team championships get treated, and that escalated to the both of them leaving WWE. Immediately after that walkout, WWE said on Smackdown that week in May that a tournament will happen to crown the new tag team champions. It will be August soon, and there's still been no follow-up from WWE on the state of that tournament for the vacated women's tag team titles. If WWE really wanted to stick to Sasha and Naomi, they could have crowned the new women's tag team champions that following week and put so much care and attention towards the titles, but things didn't go that way at all. Instead of trying to prove them wrong, WWE has just proven Sasha and Naomi right after all. The women's tag team titles don't mean anything to WWE. The titles have been vacated for over 2 months. They mentioned a tournament to crown the new champions that never happened, and nobody cares. If the titles did mean something, there would have been new champions crowned right away. It's like we mentioned last time this story came up, no other title in WWE would ever go over 50 days of being vacated. But that's what we're seeing now with the women's tag team titles. Well over 50 days vacated with no signs of new champions being crowned anytime soon, which proves Sasha and Naomi's point that the division and the champions don't really matter. Well, a new report recently came out that said there's been absolutely no new discussions of that tag team tournament that WWE announced on Smackdown back in May. It's not a topic of discussion right now for WWE, and no one knows the actual status of the tournament. It may just be a myth now at this point. Not only is the tournament up in the air, but the women's tag team titles and division itself is also up in the air. The women's tag team titles are still being listed as active titles on WWE's website, but reports claim that some people are unsure if we'll ever see the titles again anytime soon. So we went from having Sasha Banks and Naomi as tag team titles, to the walkout, to the titles being vacated, to now wondering if the division and the titles are now over and done for good. It's just bizarre that even with losing Sasha Banks and Naomi from the company, and the titles being vacated for 50 days, the disrespect towards the titles is just continuing. So there's no immediate plans for the titles and division anytime soon, but we'll have to see if anything changes with that down the line. It was well over a decade ago, but the Usos first made their WWE debut with their relative, Tamina, by their side. The Usos would then go off by themselves to continue their great work in the tag team division, while Tamina has also accomplished a lot in WWE. The biggest question that has been surrounding the Bloodline for years now is if they will ever add another member of the family to the group. It can be a relation through marriage or through an actual family member. But would they be willing to add a new member? Some of the names that have been discussed over the years include individuals like Naomi, Nia Jax, Solo Sikoa, and of course, Tamina. All the individuals with some sort of tie to Roman Reigns and the Usos. Tamina was recently a guest on the Out of Character podcast and had this to say when speaking about her family and the Bloodline, quote, "That's it right there. I mean, you can see it. That's power. That's our culture. That's what they're about. I would love to join the Bloodline, but sometimes you just gotta wait on the timing," end quote. So Naomi and Nia Jax to the Bloodline is obviously no longer possible, but there still is Solo Sikoa and Tamina at the top of the list for possible new members for the Bloodline. Sure, Tamina's recent role on WWE television has been more of a comedic relief role with the 24/7 title, but you can't forget about the dominant eras that her character went through as well. She was a very brutal enforcer for AJ Lee back in the day. She wreaked havoc during her tag team with Nia Jax, so everyone knows that she's highly capable of flipping that switch and being one of the most dominant and brutal superstars in WWE. Which of course would be perfect for the Bloodline. A lot of fans are always wondering about what's going to happen when the Bloodline runs low on fumes. How can they keep it going in a refreshing way? Well, the inclusion of a new member like Tamina or Solo Sikoa may be that spark that the entire Bloodline can benefit from. So we'll have to see if Tamina can ever find her way into the Bloodline. Dolph Ziggler returned to Raw this week to close out the show by attacking Theory. Some fans are wondering why this happened, and some fans already have a great idea of where the story could be heading. Ziggler's character most likely sees a lot of himself in Theory. He's this young, promising star with so much potential, and how everyone thinks he'll take over the WWE one day. Ziggler's been there before. He was once that guy. He knows what it's like. He held the Money in the Bank contract before. He had a successful cash-in. He knows all about what Theory's about to do. So maybe that's some of the motivation there behind him going after Theory. It's not that he's fully jealous of him per se, but maybe Ziggler just doesn't like how Theory handles his business, and that's what he wants to put an end to. So that'll be an interesting story to keep an eye on. Obviously, Theory should come out on top of that feud as well to keep building some momentum, but what are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.